Welcome back, everyone. Today's AITA stories are messy, and you're not going to believe what these people did. I told my mother-in-law she can't redecorate my living room while I'm at work, and now she's deeply offended. I've been married to my husband, Mark, 33M, for almost 4 years. We live in a modest but cozy 2-bedroom house that we bought together just before our wedding. It's our sanctuary. We've worked really hard and spent countless weekends with paint rollers in our hands to make it feel like our space. Not Pinterest perfect, but warm, functional, and full of little things that reflect us. There's the slightly lumpy armchair we inherited from my grandmother that's the best seat in the house, the abstract painting we bought on our honeymoon in Lisbon that hangs over the mantle, the bookshelves overflowing with a chaotic mix of sci-fi paperbacks and art history tomes. It's us. My mother-in-law, Linda, 58F, has always had opinions. Big, sweeping, unsolicited opinions about everything. The way I fold laundry, you'll get permanent wrinkles that way. How I load the dishwasher, plates should be angled this way for maximum water penetration. Even the way I make mashed potatoes, you're not using enough butter, you're starving your husband. She's not cruel, exactly. She doesn't use insults. Instead, she has this way of framing her critiques as helpful, life-improving wisdom, which makes me feel like I'm perpetually failing some invisible homekeeping and life management exam that only she has the answer key to. From the very beginning, Linda has had this potent interior design energy. She's the type who rearranges hotel room furniture for better flow and can't pass a display at Home Goods without loudly sighing. That would look so much better than what you have. When Mark and I first moved into our house, she was over a lot. At first, I didn't mind. She's a fantastic cook. She genuinely helped us unpack, and she even bought us a gorgeous, soft throw blanket that actually matched our couch perfectly. I was grateful. But very quickly, her help started feeling like an invasion, a slow mission coup of my domestic choices. The first major incident was the bookshelf. I came home from a long day at work to find my entire bookshelf, my pride and joy, completely reorganized. She had pulled every single book off the shelves, sorted them by the color of their spine, and had gotten rid of the ugly ones, her words, by putting them in a donation box in our garage. This box contained some of my most beloved, dog-eared paperbacks. She beamed at me, gestured to the aesthetically pleasing rainbow on my shelves, and said it looks so much cleaner now. I stood there, speechless, wondering if she thought my house was a Home Goods display or an actual lived-in home where people read books, not just arranged them as props. I spent an hour that night rescuing my ugly books from the garage, feeling a bizarre mix of fury and shame. Another time, it was the kitchen. I'm an avid cook and I have my own system. I came home to find my entire spice rack had been emptied and relabeled. She had alphabetized everything. At first glance, it seemed helpful if a bit obsessive. Then I noticed a small bag on the counter labeled expired spices. Inside was my smoked paprika, my saffron I'd splurged on, and my favorite chili powder, all of which I had bought within the last 6 months. She'd gone through every single jar, checked the dates, and thrown out anything she deemed too old, regardless of whether it was still perfectly good. Spices lose their potency, sweetie, she'd explained later over the phone. You can't get good flavor with stale ingredients. The fact that she had gone through my cabinets item by item to correct my spice management felt deeply intrusive. And then there was the entryway. She decided it wasn't welcoming enough, and while we were out for the day, replaced the simple modern mat I'd picked out with one that said, "Bless this home," in a swirling, glittery cursive. She also moved our shoe rack from its convenient spot by the door into the hall closet so guests wouldn't see the clutter, except now we trip over a pile of shoes the second we walk in the door because Mark, bless his heart, will never develop the habit of opening a closet to store his shoes. Each time this happened, I would try to talk to Mark about it. He would listen, sigh, and deploy his standard defense, "That's just how mom is." Or the classic, "She means well, honey, her love language is unsolicited projects." And I know she doesn't hate me, but it's utterly exhausting to feel like my own home is constantly under review, always one step away from a surprise makeover. I've tried dropping hints. I've said things like, "Oh, we really like it the way it is," or "We're still figuring out our own style." But Linda seems to take that as a challenge, like I've given her a puzzle to solve. To her, our style is just a temporary draft waiting for her expert final edit. This brings me to last week. I was at my desk, deep in a project with a deadline looming when my phone rang. It was Linda. That in itself was unusual. She's a texter, so a direct call usually means something is urgent. I answered, my mind immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios. "Hi, sweetie," she said, her voice brimming with cheerful energy. So I was thinking, your living room could really use a refresh for the summer. Those velvet curtains are just too heavy for this time of year. The area rug is so dark, it absorbs all the light, and the way you have the furniture arranged doesn't make the best use of the space. It closes everything off. I listened, my stomach slowly clenching. I could picture her standing in my living room, head tilted, eyes narrowed in critical assessment. I loved those curtains. They made the room feel cozy in the winter. The rug was dark, yes, but it was also great at hiding the occasional coffee spill. Anyway, she continued, completely oblivious to my silence. "I'm free tomorrow, so I was thinking I could just swing by while you're at work and get it all done for you. It'll be a lovely surprise for when you get home." She said it the way someone might say, "I'm dropping off some banana bread." It was presented as a simple, harmless, helpful gesture, but I was sitting at my desk under the fluorescent lights of my office trying to process that my mother-in-law had just announced she was going to come into my private home, move all my furniture, replace my decor, and basically restage my entire living room while I wasn't even there. All my past frustrations, the books, the spices, the doormat, coalesced into a single firm feeling. No, not this time. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to remain calm and steady. "Oh, Linda, that's a really generous thought, but I'd rather you didn't do that while I'm not home." Dead silence on the other end of the line. For a second, I thought the call had dropped. Then she let out a laugh, but it wasn't a real one. It was the tight, brittle, offended kind of laugh. "Why?" she asked, her chipper tone gone. "I thought you'd be thrilled. You've been saying you wanted to brighten the place up. I know exactly what to do to make it feel airy and inviting. You wouldn't have to lift a finger." This was my moment to either fold, as I usually did, or hold my ground. "I really appreciate the thought," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But Mark and I actually like the way things are right now, and if we were going to make any big changes, I definitely want to be involved in picking things out." Her voice went from brittle to ice cold. "Wow, okay. I was just trying to help. I guess I won't bother next time." I try to keep it light, de-escalate. It's not about not wanting help, it's our space, and making those decisions together is part of the fun for us. "Well, clearly I've overstepped." Again, she said, her voice dripping with martyrdom. And then, click, she hung up on me. I sat there, staring at my computer screen, phone still pressed to my ear. My heart was pounding. I felt a confusing mix of relief at having finally said no and a deep sinking dread about the fallout I knew was coming. Sure enough, when I got home that night, Mark was sitting on the couch, our couch, in its current unrearranged position, looking like he'd been called to the principal's office. He looked up at me, his expression weary. "So, Mom called me," or she did. Apparently, right after hanging up on me, she had phoned him, crying to give her side of the story. She told him I had been cold and dismissive, that I was blocking her from helping, and that she felt completely unappreciated and unwelcome in our home. She dramatically detailed how she had already picked out lighter linen curtains, a beautiful new jute rug, and some cute summer accents from her favorite store, all of which she now had to go through the trouble of returning because I don't trust her taste. Mark relayed this to me with a deep sigh. "She was just trying to be nice, you know," he started, using his default line. "Mark, she was going to change our entire living room without asking," I said, my voice rising with frustration. "She wasn't asking for permission, she was informing me of her plans. How is that okay?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Yeah, I get it," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I get why you don't want her doing it without you there. It's a bit much." He paused. "But her feelings are really hurt. She thinks you hate everything she does." I thought that was the end of it for the night, a temporary ceasefire. But the next morning I woke up to a text from Linda at 6 a.m. It read, "I didn't realize making your home more beautiful for you and my son would be such a crime. Don't worry, I won't interfere again." I just stared at it. It was worded like a promise, but it felt like a threat. It was a masterclass in passive aggression, designed to make me feel like a cruel, ungrateful monster. Showed it to Mark, who just groaned and said, "Just ignore it, she's being dramatic. She'll get over it." But she hasn't gotten over it. Since that exchange, she's been completely distant. No random texts with recipes, no offers to pop by, which I'll admit is a massive relief. But she's also skipping the little check-ins she normally does with Mark. Our weekly Sunday family dinner was abruptly canceled this past weekend via a curt text to the family group chat. Not feeling up for hosting this week. Sorry. My sister-in-law texted me privately almost immediately, "Is everything okay with your MIL? She seems upset." The guilt churned in my stomach. Mark says she's pouting and that maybe I could have been more tactful. And now, in the silence she's created, I'm torn. On one hand, I feel like I set a perfectly reasonable boundary. Don't redecorate my house without me. It's my home. On the other hand, I can't shake this nagging guilt. Like I've somehow made a huge deal out of nothing and crushed her genuinely good intentions. The thing is, I know Linda didn't mean it in a malicious way. In her mind, she is the hero of the story. She sees a problem, our drab living room, and she has the solution. To her, this is probably the equivalent of bringing over a casserole for a busy neighbor, a kind, thoughtful gesture that makes someone's life easier and more beautiful. She can't comprehend why anyone would reject such a gift. But to me, it feels fundamentally different. This is our home, my safe space, the one place in the entire world where I get to decide where the couch goes, what color the curtains are, and whether the rug brightens the room or not. Her constant improvements feel like a persistent underlining of the idea that the way I choose to live is wrong. And yet, I keep replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I sounded as cold as she claims. Did my tone make it worse? Should I have softened the blow with more flattery? Something like, "Wow, Linda, your ideas are so creative and you have such amazing taste. I'd love that. Let's plan a day to go shopping and do it together." Would that have kept her from going into full martyr mode? Would it have been a lie? Yes. But would it have been a peacekeeping lie that would have made my life easier? Absolutely. I hate conflict. I grew up in a house where nobody ever raised their voice, and I am pathologically conflict avoidant. I hate the weird thick tension that now hangs over our family like an awkward, ugly chandelier, one that Linda would surely want to replace. My husband keeps saying she'll get over it, but I know Linda, she's the type who remembers. This incident will become a permanent throw pillow of resentment, sitting firmly on her mental couch for years to come. It will be brought up at future holidays. "Oh, I was going to get you a new frame for that photo, but I know how particular you are, so I didn't dare." And then there's the tiny, annoying voice in my head, the one that sounds suspiciously like my own people-pleasing tendencies. It whispers, "It's just a living room. Who cares if she changes the curtains? You could have changed them back after work and said you missed the old ones. It's not a big deal." That voice is making me wonder if I made this into a bigger battle than it needed to be. Like maybe I dug my heels in simply because it's her. But then I think about coming home from a stressful day, turning the key in my own front door and walking into a living room that is suddenly unfamiliar. My things moved, my choices erased, and new objects put in their place without my consent. And my chest tightens with anxiety all over again. I don't want to feel like a guest or a child in my own house. So here I am, sitting on my lumpy grandmother's armchair in my perfectly fine, not redecorated living room, staring at the honeymoon painting over the mantle, wondering if I completely overreacted. On paper, what I said seems utterly reasonable. Please don't redecorate my home without me there. But in the emotional landscape of a family, it feels like I dropped a bomb. My husband's neutral to slightly annoyed stance isn't helping, and Linda's cold shoulder makes me feel like I've committed a cardinal family sin. I can't decide if this boundary was a hill worth dying on, or if I just made my life infinitely harder for no reason. Maybe I am too rigid, too sensitive about my space, but another part of me feels that if I had let this slide, it would have set the tone forever. That my home is not my own, but a showroom open for edits anytime Linda feels inspired. And honestly, I'm just so tired of feeling like my choices, my home, and my life aren't good enough unless they pass her invisible approval test. So, AITA for telling my mother-in-law she can't redecorate my living room while I'm at work? Or should I have just let her do it and dealt with the consequences to keep the peace?